decided to go in the route of looking at kind of talking a little bit about my story, my journey. Earlier I talked about me being a certified addiction counsellor and a registered psychotherapist, but there's a lot more to me than that. There's a lot more to my journey than that and how I ended up here. I'm 46 years old right now. I wasn't always 46. There was a lot of stuff that's happened to me in my life that's brought me to this place. I wasn't always an addiction counsellor and a psychotherapist. So I thought I'd start off with what's my story that's brought me to here. Obviously, if you can't tell, I wasn't born in Canada. I was born and raised in England in a small town called Tamworth, which is in the Midlands, in between Coventry and Birmingham. If I was going to say the nearest city, I would say Lichfield, but nobody knows where the hell that is, so I just say Birmingham. What's that? Or cares, yeah, that's true. And I was raised in a really supportive family. Right? My parents were very supportive. I did all the usual sports stuff in England. I did football or soccer, whichever way you want to call it. I'm still not used to saying soccer. I've been here 20 years and I still call it football. I played a lot of football. I was an athlete. My older brother was a really good athlete. And my parents supported me with everything. I was in what you would say was a perfect environment to lead a healthy life. An early age, though, I think probably around like 9, 10, I started to feel like I didn't fit in. I started to feel like different, like, I'm into sports and stuff, but that's not really my thing. I don't know whether I want to do that. Like, yeah, it's fun, but, I'm a bit more into science fiction. But I don't want to talk about that because, like, everyone tells me I'm a geek, everyone tells me I'm a nerd, so I'm just going to play football because that helps me to fit in with people. But really, in the closet, I'm watching Star Trek and doing all this sort of stuff, right? So I started to feel just a little bit different, and I still watch Star Trek too. Then, I would say probably around 11, I began to use substances. I was at a party one night. I was about 11 years old. It was like a family party, and one of the kids downstairs snuck up a can of beer. Because beer's everywhere in England, if you didn't know that. If anybody watches Coronation Street, it's all based around the pub. Everything in England revolves around alcohol. I mean, it's a very alcohol-driven society. So somebody sneaks up a can of beer, and everyone's like, who's going to drink it? Who's going to drink it? Well, just for a laugh, I said me. So I drank this can of beer, and when people go to Alcoholics Anonymous, quite often they'll say, that first drink that they had made the huge difference for them, and they knew that alcohol was the thing for them right away. That didn't happen to me. I threw up, I passed out, and I was carried home. And we never spoke about it again. So for me in that moment, though, I thought, that's really strange. Like when I drank that drink, I felt like everyone was relating to me. I felt like everybody was laughing and joking and saying, Steve, look at what he's doing. And I felt really great, which is kind of strange because physically I felt horrible, but emotionally I felt great. So I started to drink more and more and more. At the age of 14, I was drinking regularly, probably 4, 5, 6 times a week. I was quite tall for my age at 14. I'm not much taller now than I was when I was 14. So I was able to get into pubs. People used to serve me alcohol thinking that I was already 18 when I wasn't. So I was able to drink quite regularly. I started to hang out with people that drank. I started to forget about those people that I was doing all the sports with. I dropped out of playing football. I dropped out of the athletics program that I was involved in. I wasn't playing rugby anymore. I played a lot of musical instruments. I played guitar, I played keyboard, I played drums as a young boy. I stopped doing all of that. I dropped out of my guitar lessons. I remember sitting in a working man's club when I was about 16 years old, and there was a guy there who was like 19 or 20, and he knew me from high school. And he said, weren't you like the fastest kid in school? Weren't you like this athlete? And I'm sitting there with a cigarette in one hand and a pint of beer in the other hand. And I said, yeah. He said, that stuff's going to affect you, right? And I said, yeah. But I still just carried on doing it. I would say by my early 20s, I was addicted to alcohol, 100%. When I look back at my life right now, I was an alcoholic by the time I was 21. I was drinking on a daily basis. My life was complete chaos. My family life was falling apart. I wasn't involved in, going to family events anymore unless alcohol was there. If alcohol was there, then I would show up. I was usually drunk by the time I got there. I was definitely drunk by the time I left. I couldn't remember conversations that I've had with people. I was what's considered a blackout drunk. That means when I drink, I don't remember things for long periods of time. I can honestly say now that there's probably a number of years in my life that I don't remember if I put everything together, which is kind of scary when you think about it. But life became chaos, which is what I was talking about earlier. When I moved to Canada, I was 24. I was definitely an alcoholic at that point. And I got introduced. I was working as a mechanic in those days. I worked for Mercedes-Benz. Did my apprenticeship with Mercedes-Benz in England. Moved here. That was how I got the opportunity to move here. I worked for Mercedes-Benz in Oakville. Met some interesting people, and I started bartending as a part-time job, which is a great job for an alcoholic. Sorry, that's a joke. But so I started bartending, and this introduced me to a few new things. I started getting into drugs. Cocaine was introduced to me, amphetamines was introduced to me, marijuana was introduced to me, so I started using drugs as well as alcohol. So now I'm starting to develop all sorts of addictions in my life. It's getting more and more chaos. I can't hold a job for more than about 12 months. I can do it for about 6 months quite successfully, but then things start to go wrong because I'm calling in sick. I used to call it calling in drunk. I'm not showing up when I'm supposed to show up. I'm not doing the job that I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not doing the training anymore, so people let go of me. But I've got this mechanic's license, so I'm able to walk into the next job, and I can hold it down for about 6 months. I manage to function, but then the alcohol and the drugs starts to take over, and eventually I lose that job. And this was kind of the cycle for a number of years. I struggled. I realized I think I was an alcoholic and a drug addict, probably in my early 30s. I'd gotten married. We were discussing having children, and one day she sat down with me and she said, "You do realize you're an alcoholic, right?" And I'm like, "What? What do you mean I'm an alcoholic? I just like a drink." That's the usual adage that everybody throws out there from England, right? He's not an alcoholic, he just likes a drink. I mean, the fact that I was, drinking on a daily basis, I was hiding my alcohol, I was using marijuana and amphetamines, lots of different things that I was doing. All of a sudden, this came into my awareness that maybe I am an alcoholic, maybe I am a drug addict, maybe there's something going on for me that I need to take a look at. So I started going to meetings, AA meetings at first, and it's always interesting when I talk at AA occasionally now, not very often. I used to talk a lot more, not so much now, but when I do talk at AA, I quite often talk about my initial meetings that I went to. I was the guy who sat at the back when people were talking and looked around the room going, "That guy's a loser, that guy's an arse, I can't stand what that guy's talking about, I'm way better than that guy." So I was judging everybody in the room, forgetting that I'm there for the exact same reasons as them. And then I'd leave, stop at the liquor store and get drunk on the way home. So life was just complete chaos. It was only really when I started to listen for the similarities in the stories that I was hearing on a daily basis when I was going to these meetings, instead of looking for all the differences and trying to look at how I was different to the people that I was in the room with, when I started to see how I was similar, that it actually started to make a difference, that I started to change some things in my life. When I got to the ripe old age of 37, I actually took a big plunge and said, "You know what, I'm really going to go for it this time." I don't know what it was. One day I just woke up and I thought, that's it. I'm not drinking this anymore. I'm not taking that drug anymore. I'm going to stop. So that's when my sobriety started.